You have been getting ready for a voyage you hardly know you are on. As you know, life is a transitory dream, a pause before something much better, not a limitless length of time. Still, most individuals live as if this fantasy would never fade. They create, they pursue, they grab, only to discover that finally everything falls through their fingers. But suppose the one thing you most dread, death, is not the end, but rather the best chance of all. Commonly known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the ancient knowledge of the Bardo Thodol presents a revelation so great that it questions the fundamental basis of our understanding of life. Attributed to the esteemed Guru Padmasambhava, this holy book describes death as a transit, a portal to a greater reality rather than as a last scene. It explains the bardos, the in-between states in which the soul is deprived of all illusions and faced with its actual character. But these phases reflect the challenges and changes we go through in life itself, not just what follows the body's dissolution. Every change, in this life or the next, offers a chance to wake. Will you be ready when the occasion calls for it? The first stage opens upon death, the Chikai Bardo, the instant the soul departs the body and comes upon the brilliant presence of the clear light. This light is you, not some separate from you. Pure, limitless knowledge without form and beyond identity. Many people who have had near-death experiences report an intense brightness, a sensation of expansion so great it surpasses human knowledge. This is the same phenomena the Bardo Thodol describes, the instant the curtain is removed to expose the truth. Still, there is no assurance of recognition. Most souls hesitate, often changed by their bonds. Confounded, they cannot understand that the very light before them is the release they have been waiting for lifetime. Fear drives them away, clutching the traces of their past life. This doubt indicates a turning point as the chance to meet the light is fleeting. Should one fail, the soul advances into the next stage, one molded not by transcendence, but by residual wants and worries. The Chikai Bardo teaches us that learning to see what has always been there is more important in preparing for death than in trying to escape the unavoidable. Among the most effective instruments available for this is meditation. One may become acquainted with the core of the clear light before death ever comes by quieting the mind and gazing beyond transient ideas. Those who have developed this consciousness in life are significantly more likely to welcome it after the body is gone from us. For those caught in distraction, immersed in the material world, engulfed by fleeting identities, the light is too strange, too overpowering. They thereby veer more toward the next phase. Beyond the first Bardo, the soul moves into the Coniad Bardo, a world where the projections of the mind materialize. Here the trip becomes more complicated. Here every fear, every unresolved feeling, every strongly ingrained desire shows itself clearly. Though they are not outside powers, some may see terrible visions, gods of wrath, or disturbing settings. They are reflections fashioned by one's own thoughts. Those who grasp this may nevertheless find release because they realize these expressions have no actual power. Those who are unprepared, however, vanish under the waves of their own delusions. The Bardo Thodol's deeper reality is that it is a guidebook for the living as much as a guidance for the dead. Your present lifestyle shapes what you encounter in the Bardos. Should your thoughts be weighed with uncertainty, attachment, and anxiety, the same forces will show up when the time comes. But if you practice mindfulness, clarity, and detachment, you could see these illusions for what they are and go beyond them. Death is a mirror, not a destination. Your perspective on that mirror will totally reflect your lifestyle. Therefore, the actual concern is how you are getting ready for death, not what occurs after it. The Chid Bardo is a mirror showing the terrain of your own thoughts rather than an outside environment. Every figure, every picture, every feeling you come across reflects yourself. The luminous creatures of knowledge and compassion are the realization of the values you developed in daily life. They are not far-off gods. Similarly, the terrible wrathful forms are the naked expressions of repressed fear, rage, and guilt, not demons out to punish. For the unprepared, this world is confusing, and an excessive show of unresolved emotions generates a tempest of uncertainty. For the one who understands, however, these images provide a great chance to see fully, to let go, to transcend. Why then do these visions matter? because they reveal the reality of the soul's condition, formed by the ideas, goals, and deeds carried throughout life. The Bardo Thodol advises that the soul responds reflexively without awareness, fleeing the wrathful entities, clinging to the calm ones, and thus bound itself even more to the never-ending cycle of samsara. However, there is another. People who see these apparitions for what they are, projections of their own mind, can dissolve them with awareness, therefore opening the path to liberation. The main secret is that delusion confused for truth binds you in death, just as it binds you in life. The Chid Bardo reflects what occurs within you every day, not just a view of the next world. How often do you mistakenly believe your ideas to be truth, your feelings to be ultimate reality? The difficulties of life reflect the difficulties of this Bardo. Though they appear like outside pressures upon you, the dread of rejection, the sorrow of failure, and the worry about the unknown are constructs of your own mind. Like this Bardo, life offers chances for awareness practice. To acknowledge impermanence is to approach release. Essential instruments in this process are awareness and meditation. Observing your ideas free from attachment or fear helps you to be ready to negotiate both life and death with clarity and bravery. In this stage, the stakes are tremendous. Should the soul give in to its delusions, it is dragged even further into the cycle, molded by prior wants and anxieties. Imagine caught in a vivid dream, unable to understand that what you see is not real. The Chid Bardo carries this risk, but consciousness transforms everything. The dream vanishes when the soul understands that the terrible sights are really its own mental distortions. According to the Bardo Thodol, evasion reinforces illusions. Confrontation with insight lessens their power. What you avoid in life will show up more strongly in death. This Bardo also teaches a great lesson on how we negotiate challenges in daily life. These emotions, the wrath against a competitor, the need for validation, the worry over uncertainty, do not come from the outer world. They emerge within, molded by karma and perspective. The Chid Bardo presents this fact straightforwardly, pushing the soul to face itself. The wrathful gods are facets of your own mind, waiting for development. They are not foes. For those who overlook this, the road proceeds into the next phase, that of rebirth, the Siddha Bardo. Still, for the one with perfect vision, emancipation is within reach. This instruction involves self-awareness and preparation, even if it is a warning as well as a promise. You already possess the ability to transcend misery. The soul passes from the Chid Bardo into the Siddha Bardo, the threshold of rebirth. Here karma manifests itself, and the soul is pulled toward its future existence. This stage is fashioned by the gathered energy of one's life. It is not random. Attachments, wants, and worries draw the soul toward a new body, a new surroundings, a new cycle of experience. Those uninformed of this process might find themselves caught in situations that reinforce past behaviors. Still, even at this instant, there is one last opportunity for escape. The Siddha Bardo shows the most intense impulses of the soul. Here is where the greatest effect of unresolved karma is found. Imagine an angry spirit attracted to a chaotic environment, a place of conflict, of suffering, of strife. Another, strongly linked to material riches, can reincarnate in times of scarcity or avarice, never stopping in its relentless search. These results are reflections, exact echoes of the unsettled path of the soul, not penalties. Tibetan Buddhist teachings stress on life preparation for this precise reason. The more liberated one is from these unconscious impulses, the clearer the intellect is at death. Among the most vivid depictions in the Bardo Thodol is the soul seeing possible rebirths, represented by images of parents in connection. This is a time when a strong decision is taken, not by deliberate will, but by the force of attachment and repulsion. The soul moves into rebirth when it responds with desire or opposition. Still unattached, nevertheless, one who sees through the illusion may transcend totally and dissolve into the pure light of ultimate emancipation. This visual has more significance. The Siddha Bardo symbols represent the unmet needs and attachments that keep the cycle of rebirth active. We go through this procedure on a lesser level, even in daily life. Every moment of impulse, every unbridled need, Every response to pleasure or sorrow supports our karmic inclinations. How often do we pursue ephemeral pleasures only to discover we are caught in an unsatisfying cycle? How often do we flee unpleasantness just to find it once again in another form? These cycles are the same whether one is living or after death. Breaking free calls for awareness, attention, and the understanding that our outside search can only be satisfied within. The Sipa Bardo teach us to reflect on our lives, therefore transcending death. Are we led by unconscious tendencies, or are we choosing based on wisdom? Do we let our attachments to control our life, or do we see them? These determine our quality of life, and are not abstract spiritual concerns. The Bardo Thodol is a guide for the living, a summons to awaken now, before the trip begins, not just a book about the hereafter. Ultimately, the samsara cycle does not tie you. You commit yourself to it. And the shackles start to break apart the instant you can plainly perceive this. The road to liberation is knowledge, detachment, and the bravery to confront oneself totally regardless of life or death. The issue is whether you are really awake while you are living rather than what occurs after death. These issues are not just abstract ideas. They are fundamental for everyone looking for actual freedom, in life as well as beyond. The last stage before rebirth, the Sipa Bardo, is when the soul's attachments, anxieties, and aspirations come together to define its future life. But preparation for this moment starts now, in every idea, every deed, every instant of consciousness, not after death. One's skill of detachment and awareness will determine whether or not one can negotiate this Bardo clearly. This is seeing life and emotions with great awareness, knowing their fleeting character without being caught in them. It does not mean rejecting them. Phawa, a meditation method meant to help the mind eliminate attachments at the moment of death, is used by Tibetan Buddhists by means of visualization and concentrated awareness. Practitioners straighten their attention toward the bright light, therefore avoiding the Sipa Bardo illusions. When done consistently, this practice raises the possibility of release from the cycle of reincarnation, therefore releasing the soul. But spiritual preparation involves ethical behavior as well as meditation. Every idea, goal, and deed leaves a karmic imprint that shapes not just the current life, but also those to come. Living with compassion, kindness, and self-awareness not only generates good karma, but also helps the mind to release self-serving impulses. And this mental discipline becomes a great guide across the Bardos when the hour of death approaches. The Sipa Bardo marks for many the last struggle before rebirth. For those who have prepared, nevertheless, it is also a really opportune period. Here the final decision is taken, either rebirth or release. The two vary mostly in one realization, the capacity to see through illusion. According to the Bardo Thodol, freedom is the inherent condition of a mind free from attachment. It is not something one searches outside. The Sipa Bardo reflects the cycles we go through every day rather than just an experience after death. Learning to interrupt these cycles in life helps the soul to be ready for the ultimate change. The adversary we have been trained to dread is not death. It is a great spiritual portal, a revealing of the self beyond the distortions of the physical world. The Tibetan Book of the Dead presents a radical viewpoint. Death is an awakening, a chance to go beyond suffering, not a death at all. But this chance is fashioned by our current way of life. It does not simply show up at the time of death. The Bardos are alive within us, always reflecting our attachments, decisions, and awareness. They are not far-off worlds waiting at the end of life. The Chikai Bardo asks us to see the obvious brightness of pure awareness. How then can we welcome something we have never done? The Chit Bardo helps us to confront our own projections of wants and anxieties. But if we have never gone deep, how can we identify them as illusions? The Sipa Bardo offers the last choice, liberation or reincarnation. Most souls, unable to escape the grip of prior training, follow the same karmic patterns without awareness. This is why ultimately preparedness for dying is about knowing life. Tibetan Buddhism holds that our everyday experiences are not apart from the Bardos. Every instant is a Bardo, a change, a chance to choose awareness over response. By developing awareness in the present, we equip ourselves for the more major changes ahead. Think about how frequently we respond to the demands of life with attachment, fear, or wrath. These emotional reactions reflect the path the soul travels in the Bardos, where either clinging to wants or running from worries ties us to samsara, the never-ending cycle of suffering. The lessons of the Bardo Thodol let us realize that spiritual preparation is about accepting death as a natural process rather than about avoiding it. Death reveals the reality of awareness by wiping away the illusions of material life. We feel less anxiety and resistance as the body melts the more we acknowledge this reality over our lifetime. Not just techniques for everyday tranquility, meditation, mindfulness, and self-inquiry, but instruments for negotiating the final shift with clarity and power. Seeing death this way helps us to rethink our whole perspective on life. Death is veiled in many societies in dread, denial, and avoidance. Work, pleasure, and worldly aspirations help us to divert ourselves from mortality. We hope to somehow avoid it by ignoring it. But the Tibetan Book of the Dead asks us to approach death as a teacher rather than as a foe. It helps one to realize that thinking about death is a freeing rather than a gloomy activity. Understanding death helps us to release the bonds tying us to misery. Everything we know, possessions, relationships, even our own identity, is transient. Still, this awareness is designed to liberate us, not to cause hopelessness. We cease clutching, and in that release we discover real presence and purpose when we truly realize nothing lasts. Knowing that the road is about waking up rather than about clinging on, we start to live completely and welcome every moment with awareness instead of dreading the inevitable. The road to release starts now, not after death. Every idea, every deed, every decision is determining the path the soul travels throughout the Bardos. The issue is not whether death is approaching, that is, rather is. The real issue is whether you will be ready when it comes. Have you developed your thinking to identify the unambiguous light? Will you be able to let go, to shatter the delusions binding you? The Bardo Thodol is a cry to wake up while still living, not directions for the dead. The samsara cycle does not cage you. You cage yourself with attachment and anxiety. But the road to liberation opens right now the instant you see through the illusion and choose awareness over response. The decision stays the same whether one is living or dying. Cling and carry on the cycle. Go and be free. You are not just living, you are changing. Every second represents a movement from one state of being to another. Life itself is a bardo, an in-between place in which we are always shifting, developing, and getting ready for next. Most people, nevertheless, live as if they are still, fixated on ideas of permanency, control, and certainty. As it happens, nothing stays the same. Everything melts, alters, and disappears. And the worst delusion of all is the conviction that death exists apart from life. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, often called the Bardo Thodol, death is a portal rather than the end. It is a revealing of truth, a time when the soul is faced with its own character free from any illusions. But our way on this road will totally rely on our past. The lessons of the Bardos are deep teachings on how to live with awareness, detachment, and wisdom, not just road maps of the hereafter, not found after death. Rather, freedom is developed today in the decisions we make and the attachments we drop. The Bardos teach, among other transforming teachings, the value of separation. Still, separation is not always clear-cut. It does not imply discounting life or stifling feelings. It entails completely participating without allowing fear or ambition to control you. The worry of loss melts as we let go of our drive to control everything. Imagine the tranquility that comes from the urge to attain, own, or prove something no longer driving you. This liberation is profoundly pragmatic rather than just spiritual. It enables us to see life as it is rather than how we desire it to be, therefore guiding us through it. The Bardos also stress the need of compassion and love. These are factors that mold our reality, in life and beyond, not just moral qualities. In the Coneyed Bardo, the good karma of the soul shows itself as calm, radiant visions providing direction and encouragement. Growing compassion in life has the same results. It shapes our path after death as well as our current circumstances. Love releases fear. Compassion untangles the karmic ties binding us to misery. Our spirits lighten as we open our hearts, therefore smoothing out the journey beyond this earth. Thinking about death is waking to life. Most individuals pass through life stuck in routines, reacting instead of making decisions. The Bardos help us to realize that each minute counts. Our awareness is shaped by the ideas we cultivate, the routines we develop, the emotions we hang on to, all of which equip us for the last change. The mind continues on the path it has been on all along. It does not shift abruptly after death. Mindfulness is thus really vital. Awareness enables us to deliberately influence our experience rather than let unconscious wants and anxieties run over us. Death, therefore, is a great spiritual opportunity, a mirror reflecting our actual condition of being, not an adversary. Though it presents no simple road, the Tibetan Book of the Dead gives hope. Liberation is always accessible regardless of our degree of karmic entanglement. The secret is readiness, self-awareness, and the will to welcome the future. Death is an entryway into something much better. Life is a rehearsal for death. Will we be ready, one wonders? One of the most outstanding spiritual teachers of Tibetan Buddhism, Padmasambhava, passed on this knowledge via his teachings. Often known as Guru Rinpoche, he is credited for introducing Bardo's teachings to the planet. His message was simple but profound. Both misery and emancipation come from the mind. Whether encountered in life or death, the Bardos are reflections of the mind itself rather than outside locations. For this reason, preparedness is really vital. An undisciplined mind is readily caught in illusion. A trained mind can see through the layers of fear and want and go beyond them. The idea of the clear light is among the most potent lessons Padmasambhava offers. The soul meets this at the first instant after death, the Chikai Bardo, a time of pure, brilliant awareness transcending cognition and identification. But realizing this light calls for experience throughout life. It is not natural. Our preparation for this time is meditation. We learn to touch the great, illuminating awareness underlying all experience by silence and inward contemplation. Those who have spent their life seeking diversions will find the clear light to be strange and overpowering. Those who have trained in presence, however, will know it as home. Still, another basic lesson of Padmasambhava was impermanence. Everything we go through, he said, our ideas, feelings, relationships, even our sense of self, is always changing. Reaching after what is transient only causes misery. But we start to release the hold of attachment and live more freely when we embrace impermanence. This mental transformation transforms everything. Rather than worrying about loss, we come to value every moment for what it is, a brief but lovely wave in the ocean of life. His lessons were pragmatic guides for negotiating the Bardos, not ethereal concepts. Among the most deep exercises he taught was Phawa, a meditation method meant to get the soul ready for death. By means of imagery and chant, practitioners help their awareness to unite with the clear light, therefore avoiding the illusions of the Bardos. This exercise reminds us that emancipation is a talent, something that has to be developed deliberately and with discipline. It is not a question of chance. The calm and ferocious gods detailed in the Bardo Thodol mirror Padmasambhava's great awareness of the mind. Whereas the wrathful entities represent raw energy and change, the calm ones stand for knowledge, compassion, and clarity. He said that waking calls both for both. The calm gods lead us. The wrathful gods test us to face our fears. Both mirror our own awareness. These energies live within us. They are not just legendary. While the wrathful gods show as obstacles and emotional upheaval, the tranquil gods show as times of great clarity and love. Both, nevertheless, provide chances for improvement. Many times, individuals only search for the light and reject pain and effort. But actual change calls for confronting both. Avoiding difficulty does not build strength. Rather, it is created by conscious movement through it. The lessons of Padmasambhava are still applicable now just as they were centuries ago. He supplied a road plan for negotiating the mind itself, not just direction for the next world. Whether we are approaching death or the changes of life, the road stays mindful. Less power illusion has on us the more we know about our own thoughts. The last issue thus is not just, are we prepared for death? Are we really awake in life? That is the true question. The road to emancipation starts here, right now, not somewhere else after we die. Every decision, Every idea, every conscious act gets us ready for life beyond. The Bardo Thodol is a cry to awaken, not just a book. The only issue is whether we will pay attention. Though there are many little changes as well as more significant ones in life, death is the biggest one of them. Still, in many civilizations it is the least understood, the most dreaded, and the most avoided. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Bardo Thodol, death is not an end but rather a continuance, a portal by which the soul travels, molded by consciousness, karma, and attachments. Padmasambhava's lessons show that while emancipation is always within grasp, it calls for preparation, not in the last hours of life, but rather in our daily lives. The way Padmasambhava emphasizes compassion is among the most potent features of his teachings. Compassion is a transforming power that breaks beyond ego limitations, not just a moral goal. Growing compassion helps us to go beyond our own needs and worries and toward an awareness that we are linked with all things. This change of viewpoint not only lessens pain, but also brings us in a line with the clear light, therefore enabling release. The road to liberation is found in opening our hearts to others, to the impermanence of life, and to the fact that suffering results from attachment. The knowledge of the Bardos is as important now as it was millennia before. These lessons provide a means to negotiate life with clarity and purpose in a society dominated by diversions, consumer needs, and concerns. The Bardos are reflections of the trip the mind travels in every instant, not just accounts of what follows death. Every difficulty, every loss, every change we undergo reflects the Bardos of death. Understanding this helps us to live more deliberately and lets us see every moment as a step toward release. In the end, Padmasambhava's lessons exhort us to own spiritual journey responsibilities. Liberation comes from deliberate effort, self-awareness, and discipline. It cannot happen by chance. The lesson is the same whether we are getting ready for the Bardos of death or navigating the challenges of everyday life. Freedom is achievable, but it calls for bravery and an open heart. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is a call to a basic change in how we, personally and as a society, regard life, death, and the intervals between rather than just a personal guide to the beyond. Many times, death is handled as a personal event, something that each person experiences alone. But the Bardos are formed by the communal awareness, the culture we live in, and the way our societies either welcome or reject these changes. They are not just personal paths. Death is a topic ignored, buried behind clean hospital walls, whispered in many Western nations. Often hurried, sorrow is seen as something to get over, and conversations about death are considered as ghoulish rather than instructive. This group avoidance results in a blindness that renders individuals unprepared for the unavoidable. Tibetan Buddhism, on the other hand, sees death as a natural aspect of life, something to be confronted squarely and ready for by spiritual development. The ceremonies, prayers, and thoughts around death serve the living as much as the leaving soul. They remind us that preparation is an always changing process and support the fact of impermanence. Imagine if our societies gave these lessons top priority instead of seeing death as unacceptable. Imagine families meeting to consider the impermanence of life in addition to celebrating birth and accomplishment. Imagine classrooms guiding students towards sitting with their emotions instead of running away into diversions. Imagine companies including mindfulness to enable people to manage stress with awareness instead of avoidance. Accepting the Bardos lessons as a community helps us to build a society that helps individuals throughout the natural changes of life. Because we shall encounter other Bardo than death. Every moment of change, aging, loss, heartache, even personal transformation, is Bardo, a transit from one state of being to another. We get more robust the more we know about this. Anxiety lowers, pain lessens, and instead of feeling lost in the face of change, we learn to negotiate it with knowledge. Diversions abound in the contemporary world that draw us away from this fact. These forces, endless alerts, the perpetual search for status, the idea that pleasure is something to be obtained rather than created inside, keep us apart from the truth of impermanence. However, when groups gather to practice mindfulness or to consider the more profound sides of life, they offer a place where people could re-establish connection with what is important. By doing this, they create something rare, clarity, therefore countering the cacophony of the world. The Bardo Thodol also emphasizes the need of group ceremonies. Ceremonies and prayers carried out in Tibetan Buddhism help the soul to traverse the bardos under compassionate and light direction. These rites are reminders for the living as much as for the dead. They counsel us the time to develop awareness is now as life is short. These rites might manifest themselves in contemporary settings as meditation groups, collective discussions on death, even little acts of assembling to exchange knowledge. The secret is setting surroundings where people feel encouraged on their spiritual travels. Breaking the taboo surrounding emotions like anxiety and sadness is also very vital for collective awakening. The Bardos believe that inability to understand the nature of the mind causes dread. Fear frequently isolates us in life and causes us to assume that our pain is unique. But in a society that freely accepts death as inevitable, dread loses its potency. Grief is no more something to conceal. It becomes a common experience that ties rather than separates. When we candidly discuss death, we release its power to immobilize us. Compassion forms the core of all this. The love and compassion we grow help to mold our life, just as the soul is directed throughout the bardos by its karmic imprints. Compassion is a means of our own release, not alone of assisting others. We release the grasp of ego when we give selflessly and when we create space for others without expectation. It is easier to confront the bardos with calm the less we hang to the notion of separateness. The lessons of Padmasambhava remind us that we live entwined. The trip of the soul is part of a larger total. It is not a solitary experience. Every deed of compassion, every moment of awareness, every attempt to live with wisdom generates waves far beyond the individual. The Bardos address more than only death. They are about metamorphosis, about gracefully and clearly negotiating every change. Living completely with present, compassion, and an awareness that emancipation is always within grasp is ultimately the best preparation for death. Thus, the issue goes beyond just whether we are ready for death. Are we ready to wake up, really? Since the road to freedom does not start just before death. It starts right here, these days. In this inhale, this idea, this decision. The Bardo Thodol is a call to consciousness as much as a novel. Will we listen is the only unresolved issue. Though some little and some significant changes abound in life, death is the ultimate change of all. Still, in many civilizations it is the most dreaded, the most avoided, and the least understood. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Bardo Thodol, death is a journey rather than a destination, a chance to awaken. The secret to negotiating this road is found in our daily existence, our preparation, and our awakening to the fact of impermanence, not in the last minutes of life. One cannot pursue liberation alone. Though each soul must negotiate its own road, the strength of community, of shared knowledge, and of group spiritual practice may provide great direction. Imagine a society in which death is a holy transition accepted with knowledge rather than a cause of anxiety. In a society where individuals get ready for the bardos together, helping one another in kindness and awareness. Such a change would not only change our dying, but also our living. Think about this. How may you include greater awareness and mindfulness into your regular life? How would you enable people to see death as a metamorphosis rather than as an end? These are doable actions toward a more enlightened way of life, not abstract problems. The Bardos help us to see how our life shapes the way we journey through death. We carry the same traits into the next phase of life if we develop clarity, detachment, and compassion in this one. The trip over the Bardos is generally shared as well as somewhat personal. The Chikai Bardo presents the best chance for release, the clear light. Our own mental projections are presented by the Chid Bardo, which tests our capacity to see through illusion. The Sitpa Bardo shows the pull of attachments, pointing us toward rebirth, or, for the ready soul, ultimate release. These are reflections of life itself, not just lessons on death. A call to action are the Bardos. Their teachings on detachment, awareness, compassion, not just for the next world, but for each moment we live. We modify our life more profoundly the more ready we are for death. Still, preparation starts now and cannot wait until the last minute. It starts with awareness, That is, learning to identify the attachment, fear, and want patterns influencing our decisions. With practice, meditation, self-inquiry, mindfulness, which helps the mind to stay steady, it deepens. It also thrives in connection. That is, when we provide support, knowledge, and compassion to those traveling this road with us. The Bardo Thodol presents a strong truth. Our path is not predetermined. Liberation is conceivable at every level. To accept the clear light, nevertheless, honesty to see through illusion, and discipline to let go need both bravery. Though these are not easy chores, people who are ready will be able to attain them. Should these ideas speak to you, there is more to investigate. Subscribe to our free newsletter, Insights Academy, where we publish knowledge too great to address here. Sign up using the link in the description. As a gift, get Kayan, a timeless guide to the principles of the universe, a potent book extending on these ideas. Seize this chance to learn more about the Bardos and the road to waking. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches us how to live, not just about passing death. Are we strengthening our attachments, or are we headed toward release? Are we lost in delusion, or are we getting ready to wake? Though the lessons provide a guiding hand, only you can answer these questions. They remind us that every moment, every breath offers liberation. It is not a far-off dream. As you consider this, pause to anchor yourself in awareness. Comment, "I am on the path," like this post, and forward this to someone prepared to wake up. The trip is already underway. Walk it with knowledge, clarity, and open heart.